everybody. Thanks for joining me here. Welcome in. I hope if you are living in the US that you had, or you're from the US, that you had a wonderful Thanksgiving over the weekend. Today is December 2nd, and I am not working one of my part-time jobs today, so here I am. So for anyone that's new here, I retired early-ish from my long corporate career in, I'll just call it risk management. And since then, I've done a couple things that I thought I'd be interested in, and it turns out I am, other than the short job I had at the library. You would think that working at the library would be a dream. And in some ways it can be, but it was too early on in my retirement. It'll be 2 years this January, next month, but it was too early, and the schedule I had turned out to not fit really what I was looking for. It was a beautiful historic library, not the library that I go to now, not the Carnegie Library main branch. It was another one. But, you know, another time, another place, absolutely. It was really, you could imagine. Anyway, yeah, so through lots of exploration, I've landed on what I'm doing now. I was teaching as a fitness instructor. I was teaching a class once a week, which was very yoga-like. It was something I really wanted to, it really suited me to contribute to this particular gym's roster. It's a YMCA. And now that's ended. I really didn't want to do that forever. I taught for maybe 6 months, once a week. And now I am a standardized patient, which I have talked about before at a university here. I can certainly talk about that again for anybody that's interested. So I'm working within the School of Medicine and all the other schools, physical therapy, dentistry, psychology, but I don't tend to do those gigs, and the nursing school. So I can elaborate later. So that's a very gig driven. You can sign up for an event when there is an event. There are lots of them. And then currently I just happen to be consulting in my lane of what I did as in my corporate career, which is providing risk management for mainly large nonprofits and large human service nonprofits and colleges, universities, schools, K through 12. So the last time I was here, I was reading Angel by Elizabeth Taylor. This is a book that was published in, I have some notes here because I'm just so, I don't want to lose my words about this book. It's so hard to describe the reading experience. It was published in 1957. The only other Elizabeth Taylor, I think, that I've definitely read Mrs. Palfrey at the Claremont, and that was published much later in 1971. Unlike Mrs. Palfrey, who for me is set up as a very sympathetic character, even though outwardly she might be a little exasperating at times because she wants to keep up an appearance, so to speak. She is very sympathetic. I think I mentioned the movie with the famous British female actress that I've watched based on the novel. This is a whole other thing. And I'm going to be talking about the Mookse and the Gripes podcast a lot here because they have highly influenced me over the last couple months. But there was someone else that read this recently. I wonder if it was Nora from Pear Jelly. I'm going to have to ask her on Instagram. That's where you can find her. Angelica Deverell is 15 at the turn of the century. She is the daughter of a widow who keeps a grocery shop in a dreary provincial back street, working hard to pay for Angel's education. So Angel's mother, is sending her to private school. But Angel rejects the drabness of her daily life, and retreating into a world of romantic dreams, she begins to write stories remarkable for their extravagance and fantasy. To those around her, it is simply, but Angel knows better. She knows she's different, that she will grow up to be a feted authoress, owner of great riches and of the mysterious Paradise House. So the amount of creativity and imagination in Angel, that is a part of Angel, is set up in the very beginning of the novel when she's 15 and she's going to a private school, but she doesn't have any money and she doesn't want people to necessarily know that she comes from, you know, a mother who's widowed, and she doesn't have the backgrounds that the other girls do. And so she talks a lot about this family house called the Paradise House, which is completely made up. And then eventually her mother finds out about that and people are laughing at her and them and everyone. But the Paradise House comes from a house that her Aunt Lottie actually works at as a lady's maid. And so you see how she has talked about this Paradise House for so long to her friends, or she's mentioned it, and she's thought about it and thinks about it as a comfort for so long that it almost becomes real to her. And so she's like that. The stories just roll off her tongue with these other girls. And she, instead of finishing school, she decides and is absolutely confident that she can write a novel and become famous. And that is the rest of the book. Everyone in her, and so it's very interesting to me. I have some things marked here. What was said about this book at the time and still today. Elizabeth Taylor reveals Angelica's feet of clay from the very start of Angel, and because she does so, she solicits an unlikely pity for the deluded creature later in the narrative. Angelica is drawn with a sharpness that never becomes derisive or satirical, and as a consequence, she remains real. And that's so interesting because there were times through Angel's life that I became very exasperated and sorry for people in her orbit, her unwitting publisher, Theo, her unwitting husband, Esme, and her mother, and her friend, Nora. A lesser novelist would have presented Angelica as a cynical manipulator, but not the clever Mrs. Taylor, who was very much aware that a certain type of bad writing springs straight from the heart. So it's not as if Angel is writing amazing tomes. She's just writing the right kind of story for people that want to be carried away and just at the right time. Her character remains absolutely steady through the entire book. What an amazing feat that is. And again, she's not changed at all during the novel. You see how she shows up in every situation, and in some scenes I thought, well, for sure now she's going to become like you would expect someone to respond. I wouldn't call her a monster, but she, in some ways, she is who she is, and she doesn't change. I was a little exhausted by the end of the novel, but in a way that I didn't mind. But it was a journey, I have to say, because of this unrelenting character. So this book it's about 250 pages. Let's see what I jotted down here. Strangely moving dignity. Strangely moving. She relays, as we travel through Angel's life, it's done through small, precisely observed experiences. Elizabeth Taylor allows Angel to remain as she is. She doesn't need to be remedied. I read an article that was in, I think, what would it be? The London Times, a review of someone who reread this book. It said something like that Elizabeth Taylor shows that it isn't just imagination that fuels creativity, but sometimes it can be ego, arrogance, and delusion. Yeah, I recommend this book as a wonderful character study, very hard to do without creating sympathy or anger or continued exasperation towards Angel. Because you have the beginning of the novel where it sets up reasons for her character being formed as it was early on, you understand what's happening throughout her life. And there are things, many things that I admired about Angel and how she stood up for herself and was a champion, championing herself. It's very unique for 1957. All right, so I finished this. Then I was once again listening to the Mookse and the Grapes podcast, Trevor and Paul, while I was outside doing yard work. I tell them all the time on Instagram that about something that I really enjoyed in their episode and that I was doing yard work. This time it was raking leaves. And I was catching up on some episodes, and I was listening to one that, I'll put the episode here. It was about the abundance of some book. Very interesting concept. They had a guest on. Again, I'll put who the guest is. Lisa Feathers, if I'm not mistaken. She's brilliant, just such a fascinating person and reader. They were talking about their amazement at Henry James's The Portrait of a Lady that I have now out from the library. This is a beast of a book in this edition. It's one of these everyman library editions. I don't really care for these. They have a lot of introduction and they're very heavy, but they're not very wide. So then you get very small print. I will be getting a used copy of this book because it's so densely written on these pages that I feel like I'm not making any progress, and I've had it out from the library for a while now, so I will bring it back. Again, I went down a bit of a rabbit hole about what do other people think about this book. I wanted to understand that because I'm blown away by this particular story, the way that it's written, in a way that I really wasn't in the other Henry James that I read. Like, I think it was last year. I'll put the name of the book here. I forget what it was called. The Americans? I'm not sure. I mean, it was really good, but it didn't make me run to the next Henry James, even though I do own a couple of them. I own What Maisie Knew and something else, shorter stories. The way that they were talking in this podcast episode, they were talking about the writing in this book, and also in the introduction here, I was taken aback from the first chapter. This is different. This is, as the introduction in this book says, Henry James, relating a little bit of his experience at that point in life, which was an American in Europe. And in this case, it was in the UK, in England. His experience as someone who was going to be living there and as an outsider, and very happy to be in that atmosphere, and marking the differences between the two, whether it was Europeans, the British, and Americans, and how at this time of year, at this time, it was markedly different. This was written, it was first published in 1881. It feels very modern. It feels like I would have said this was written in the early 1900s. So let me refer to my notes, because I'm telling you, I so highly recommend taking this journey, which is The Portrait of a Lady. Clear sentences. The writing has so much layering. The wordsmithing, I guess that's the only way I can say it. The structures of the sentences, the commas in the sentences, because Henry is throwing something into a sentence that is necessary and within the style of the writing. So it's not, to me, overdone at all. It's just serving to bring you into the scene, bring you into the person's head. You become part of this world. It's rich, melodic. There is an omniscient narrator, it seems. We never know. I couldn't find anything about this, about people talking about who this narrator is, but from the very beginning. And also in this introduction, it didn't tell me either, but I didn't read the whole thing because I don't like reading the entire introduction of a book in case I'm told too much. In the beginning, they're talking about tea time. Under certain circumstances, there are few hours in life more agreeable than the hour dedicated to the ceremony known as afternoon tea. There are circumstances in which, whether you partake of the tea or not, some people of course never do, the situation is in itself delightful. That is a perfect example of sentence structure. There are commas and there are dashes where he has elongated this sentence. But I feel in such a beautiful way. It's enjoyable reading, let's put it that way. Those that I have in mind in beginning to unfold this simple history offered an admirable setting to an innocent pastime. The implements of the little feast had been disposed upon the lawn of an old English country house in what I should call the perfect middle of a splendid summer afternoon. There's the eye. It's set up very early. What's interesting is that often you're given insight into a character rather than just the next chapter moving the plot along. So I'll give you an example. So there's a scene with, and I did not say that the main character, oh my goodness. The Portrait of a Lady is the most stunning achievement of Henry James's early period, when he was transforming himself from a talented young American into a resident of Europe. Isabel Archer is a beautiful, intelligent, headstrong American girl, and she is traveling to Europe and to, I think this is the UK, where she's visiting her uncle. Her aunt picks her up in Albany because I think she is, if I'm not mistaken, now doesn't have any family, but she does have money. So I think this is, yeah, she's meeting a guy named Lord Warburton, somebody who lives nearby. And it says, she wandered back to the bench where he had found her and lost herself in meditation. It might have seemed that she was keeping her vow, but this was not the case. She was wondering if she were not a cold, hard, priggish person, and on her at last getting up and going rather quickly back to the house, felt, as she had said to her friend, really frightened at herself. And really what this is referring to is her steadfast devotion to experiencing life and not getting caught up with what expectations were of a young woman at that time. And then it starts in the next chapter, chapter 13. It was this feeling, and not the wish to ask advice, she had no desire whatever for that led her to speak to her uncle of what had taken place. She wished to speak to someone she should feel more natural, more human, and her uncle, for his purpose, presented himself in a more attractive light than either her aunt or her friend Henrietta. So she had something to share, and her uncle was a nice way to reflect things and just get things out without passing judgment. She hasn't known her uncle very long at this point, but she does know that about him. And so this is an example of how sometimes the beginning of a chapter reveals something, or even the beginning of a paragraph reveals something. And here's an example of this narrator coming up again. There's a woman named Henrietta Stackpole who comes to visit. She's actually an American journalist and a friend of Isabel's, and she's now there. And so they're about to go off on a trip to London. This is the beginning of a chapter. Miss Stackpole would have prepared to start immediately, but Isabel, as we have seen, had been notified that Lord Warburton would come again to Gardencourt, and she believed it her duty to remain there and see him. So again, as we have seen, it's very confidential, very chummy, and it shows up every once in a while. And I love that about the story. You feel like, yeah, there's someone there, but we don't even know who this someone is. And I don't know whether it's revealed, probably not. But I just think that's such a unique way. It's different that Trollope does this too, but this is very American in its style compared to, for me, British writing. I think it's more simple and straightforward. I don't have any way of illustrating that other than I like the plain speaking sentences. They can have commas and dashes in them, but they all just make sense, and they're not to flourish, but to expand what's going on, or what's going on in someone's head. And I can't say enough about this. This is a very long book. I don't know what other editions have as total page count, but this one's like 620 some pages. Of course, I don't mind that at all, but this particular edition is heavy. There is a half-price bookstore near me that actually has a copy of this. And I say actually because they don't carry a lot of classics. So I looked it up, and it's just down the street, and they have it. So I picked up a couple books that I knew for a long time I really just needed to get off my shelves. I've either read them and I know I won't read them again, or they're just ones I've picked up for $1 at library sales over the last few years that I've just found out now, like, I'm never going to get to that. And so if I go there and I get a couple bucks for those books, then it will help towards the $4.99 for this used book. What I'm reading now. So one of the things I wanted to mention was that before I got stuck on The Portrait of a Lady, I was wondering, what am I going to do next? I've got, where is that debut novel or that new novel that's really capturing me this year? I've gone the entire year. I don't know. I haven't looked back, but I don't think I've been captivated by a debut or like a new literary fiction the entire year. I can remember some that were really wonderful last year, which I will be talking about. These are shorter books, actually, is really what I want to say. But I think I might have found one just in time. I saw this somewhere online and picked it up when it came in as a new book to the library. It's called Estate by Cynthia Zarin. Cynthia Zarin is the author of the novel Inverno. She's also written 6 books of poetry, including Orbit and Next Day. She's also written some children's book essay collections. She is a longtime contributor to The New Yorker. She teaches at Yale and lives in New York City. You can tell she's a poet. This is exactly what I needed. I really enjoy just the right short novel. So this is 130 pages. Carolyn, separated from her husband, finds herself drawn to Lorenzo, who is not one, but 2 other lovers. In these propulsive pages, Caroline speaks during a summer of erotic intensity and crisis, recording the stories of seduction, deception, and make-believe that she and Lorenzo tell each other. Estate is a tightly compressed tour de force in which Caroline sees revelations and responsibilities collide. Yeah, it is musings for sure. Yeah, it's really interesting. I can't say that it's propulsive. It's one of those books where I'm more successful with a book like this if I read snippets at a time. So that's been really good. I don't know whether this is going to be a favorite of mine, but this is exactly what I needed. It reminds me of like, kind of like a Maggie Smith or a Rachel Cusk. This is the kind of writing I'm talking about. It's sparse, but it's poetic. And I don't have a lot of context, but I actually don't need it. There's just enough here, and she's writing down, well, even like an Annie or No, I think she's writing down scenes from how she got to this place where she's attracted to Lorenzo, even though he's got 2 girlfriends or something. I don't know. Yeah, it's a palate cleanser for me, I would say. I like having something like this alongside something like this. This is my perfect type of pairing for sure, because this is like get in, get out, get this snippet of really richly done writing in the morning, and then read this in the evening. So yeah, that's how I'm treating that. The other thing that I've been doing, I just have to share this with you, just a little bit of making, I should say. I've been making these. It's a knitted slipper, except it's felted. It's a felted slipper. And this is my first one. This it might look really tiny, but it's not. I don't know why it looks tiny, but it fits a 7.5 to 8 women's foot. I haven't made the second one yet. That's because you make them really large. I'll show you the photo of the really large edition. And then you put them in the washer. And after a certain amount of time on a hot setting, the washer stops and through the spin cycle, and you have this. It's crazy. You use super woolly, rustic thick yarn. I get the yarn from a company called Drops, and it's Drops Snow, and I'll link this in case you're interested, but it's all over the internet. It's all over Instagram. This is the Instagram darling right now. It's called the Sailor Slipper. I'm using these colors because at the time that I ordered this yarn, all the colors were sold out because everybody's making them, but it's really fun. I'm gonna put like grippy dots on the bottom. You get it from like a craft store so that it's non-slip. That's what I've been doing. I am going to be making thin dehydrated orange slices for the tree. We have a little tree that we put in the bay window. And so I'm going to be making some dehydrated orange slices that I just then put on a piece of twine, and I put it on the little pre-lit tree that we have. I love the smell, especially when they're baking. Yeah, that's about it for me. I will be back with some short books that I've been thinking about. This got me started because I started rereading To the Lighthouse, which is not a long book, but I've put it aside because then I got all excited about The Portrait of a Lady. And I've been thinking about short books and how they can help either keep you reading in a busy season, but also get you out of a slump. And I've got some excellent examples. I'm brimming with these examples. So I'll be back with you soon, telling you about those, and then perhaps wrapping this one up for you. But I have read some excellent shorter stories that I would love to share with you that maybe you could dip into this December, this holiday season, or that you can travel with. Don't we love a good shorter story that you can travel with that's not too taxing on the brain? Anyway, yeah, let me know what you've been reading, please. And if you've got a reading project that is on the docket or that is for this holiday, I love the thought of that. Thank you so much for joining me. And for anyone that is new here, thank you so much for deciding to click on this video. I really appreciate it. I hope everyone is well. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.